The Galaxy Empire ruled countless worlds, its banners flying over stars older than memory itself. For ages, no one had dared to resist its will. The Empire's ships filled the skies and their weapons carved obedience into planets. To them, peace meant submission and silence meant victory. But everything changed the day the scanners detected something strange at the very edge of the known galaxy. At first, the signal was weak, just a whisper among cosmic noise, but as it drew closer, it became clear that something massive was moving through the void. The Empire's admirals watched in disbelief as their sensors began to distort. An entire fleet was emerging from deep space, silent and without any known identification codes. The ships were unlike anything they had seen, black, smooth, and cold, reflecting light like dark mirrors. They carried no banners, no transmission beacons, no requests for contact. They simply appeared. The command deck of the Imperial flagship filled with chatter. "Could it be another empire?" one officer whispered. "Impossible," another replied. "No civilization exists beyond that frontier." The Emperor himself appeared through the central holo display, calm but curious. "If they do not announce themselves," he said, "then they must be tested." Orders were given to scan the vessels, but the sensors failed instantly. The fleet moved with perfect coordination, not aggressive, not defensive, just silent. Then came a single transmission. No image, no sound, just one line of text that translated itself into the ancient Terran language long forgotten by most of the galaxy. The message read, "We remember." For a long moment, no one spoke. The Emperor leaned forward. "Terran?" he asked softly. The officers looked at each other. "Humans," one whispered. But that was impossible. Humanity had disappeared from the records thousands of years ago. The Empire had once tried to absorb their worlds, but the humans vanished after the final rebellion. Some believed they had destroyed themselves. Others said they had gone into the dark corners of the universe where no light reached. Yet now they were back, and they were not the same. The Empire's admirals laughed at first. "Old ghosts," one said. "If these are humans, they'll crumble like before." The Emperor, though, did not laugh. His instincts told him that something about this was wrong. He ordered a small scouting fleet to approach and investigate. 20 ships jumped to hyperspace, their trails lighting up the void. Minutes passed, then hours, no reply. Every transmission vanished and the fleet never returned. Their signal logs ended with a sudden static burst as if reality itself had been cut. That silence terrified even the bravest officers. The Empire's propaganda machines went into motion to calm the public, claiming the event was a drill gone wrong. But rumors spread faster than truth. The name humans resurfaced in frightened whispers. The old stories of Earth-born warriors who fought with reckless courage, who would rather die than bow, began to circulate again. The Emperor ordered an emergency council session. The brightest minds of the Empire gathered in the Imperial chamber, surrounded by walls of living crystal and light. "We stand at the height of our strength," one general said proudly. "No fleet can rival ours." But another voice, quieter and older, warned, "We said the same thing before they vanished last time." While debates filled the chambers, the human fleet remained motionless at the border. Their ships formed a perfect pattern. Like stars aligned with intention, the Empire's scientists tried to decode the technology. Their engines produced no radiation. Their movements defied known physics. One scientist trembled as she presented her findings. "They are not using hyperspace. They are bending the void itself." The council fell silent. "That's impossible," the Emperor muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Fear, for the first time in his reign, crept into his tone. A few brave captains requested permission to attempt contact. The Emperor agreed. A communication pulse was sent, a message of diplomacy laced with both arrogance and caution. For long minutes there was no answer. Then every display screen in the fleet flickered at once. A human face appeared, calm and unreadable. His eyes glowed faintly blue like stars reflected in water. "Your empire has forgotten," he said simply. "But we have not." Then the image vanished, leaving the fleet staring into empty space. In that moment, something shifted in the hearts of even the proudest imperial commanders. This was no invasion, they could feel it. It was something deeper, colder, and older. The humans hadn't come for conquest. They had come for remembrance, for reckoning. And as their ships floated silently, glimmering like shadows among the stars, the Galaxy Empire began to understand that their age of dominance might finally be over. The Empire's great fleets remained on high alert. Reports from the outer sectors filled the command halls. Communications lost, sensors blind, patrols vanishing. Yet still, the mysterious fleet beyond the void didn't move. They floated silently at the edge of the galaxy, their formation perfect and their energy unreadable. No radiation, no thermal output, no known technology. It was as if the ships were ghosts. The Emperor, seated on his towering golden throne, stared at the star map before him. "They test our patience," he said calmly, his voice echoing in the chamber. "If they are humans, let them prove it." He ordered the Imperial observation ships to approach under stealth protocols. Their mission was simple: study, record, and report. But hours later, every one of them disappeared. No explosions, no distress calls, just silence. For the first time in generations, the Empire felt something it had forgotten: uncertainty. The Emperor summoned his High Council once more. The vast circular chamber glowed with golden light, but the faces around him were tense. "We have ruled unchallenged for centuries," said General Maul, his armor polished like molten silver. "No power dares to face us." But the Minister of Science, pale and shaking, interrupted. "These are not ordinary ships. We don't understand their technology. They are bending gravity itself. It's not possible, unless they've gone beyond hyperspace." The council erupted into arguments. Some demanded war, others begged for patience. "We must know who they are before we act," said the Emperor at last. "We will wait and we will watch." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, citizens began to whisper. Stories spread through the lower colonies, old stories of humanity. Parents told their children tales of the ancient warriors who once stood against the Empire and refused to kneel. Many thought those stories were myths, but now they began to sound like prophecy. "They've returned," people murmured in markets, in mining stations, in spaceports. "The lost race has come back." Even the Empire's soldiers, trained to obey without question, could feel it. The air was heavy, as if something vast and unseen was drawing closer every day. Days passed and the human fleet remained motionless. Then one morning, the Empire's outer listening post detected a new transmission. It wasn't aimed at them. It was a broadcast, soft, calm, and ancient. The language was Old Terran, but its meaning was clear. "We wait for judgment." The Emperor ordered immediate translation and analysis. The message repeated for hours, echoing through every frequency in the sector. To the Empire's people, it felt like a warning. Desperate to regain control, the Empire sent drones to study the human vessels from a distance. One by one, they approached the dark ships, and each time the feed cut to static. When the final drone was lost, something strange happened. The stars themselves flickered. Imperial stations across the border system reported a blackout that lasted 7 seconds. Every light, every screen, every heart paused. When power returned, the human fleet had moved. Not closer, just repositioned, now forming a perfect circle around a dying star. The symbolism wasn't lost on the Emperor. "A message," he muttered. "They want us to see." Far away on one of the Empire's inner worlds, Commander Lyra Vaughn watched the reports from her observatory post. She was young, ambitious, and loyal, but she had always questioned the Empire's perfection. Late that night, she accessed the restricted archives, searching for the truth behind the word Terran. What she found shook her. The files were ancient and damaged, but one report survived. A record of the last human rebellion. The Empire had tried to conquer Earth's colonies, but humanity refused surrender. When the final battle came, the humans detonated their own worlds rather than submit. The Empire labeled them extinct. Lyra leaned back, whispering to herself, "They didn't die. They endured." The next day, an Imperial patrol found itself face to face with a human vessel. The ship was colossal, its surface flowing with faint blue light like a living thing. The Imperial captain hailed them repeatedly. No answer. Then the ship's surface opened, a slow ripple like water parting, and a small probe emerged. It approached the Imperial ship and stopped. The probe released a pulse of light that scanned the entire hull, and then a voice spoke through every speaker on board. "You watched us burn," it said. "Now you will see what rose from the ashes." The probe vanished instantly, leaving the crew trembling. Back in the Imperial capital, panic began to grow. The Emperor tried to maintain control, but fear spread faster than command. Religious sects declared that humanity was divine vengeance. Scientists debated how a species once so primitive could now command such power. Across the stars, ordinary people looked to the void, wondering what kind of beings the humans had become. The Emperor gave a final command. Prepare the fleets. If they seek to challenge us, we will answer with fire. But in the silence of space, the human ships didn't move. They waited, still and unbothered, as if time itself bowed to them. The Empire's fleets gathered on the border, engines glowing bright. Tension filled every system, every crew member ready to fight. Yet deep down, everyone felt it. The Empire was not facing an enemy. It was facing a reckoning. The void itself seemed to hum, carrying an unspoken truth. Humanity had crossed the darkness and returned not as conquerors, but as something far greater. As the stars dimmed around the human fleet, a single transmission reached the Emperor's private chamber. No one knew how it bypassed security. It was short and calm, spoken in perfect galactic standard. Do not mistake our silence for weakness, it said. We remember everything. And with that, the Empire understood that what waited beyond the void was not a fleet. It was history itself, returning to collect its debt. The human fleet's silence pressed on the Empire like a weight. Every night the stars over the capital world seemed dimmer, as if the void itself had grown closer. Even in the glittering cities where light never faded, people spoke in whispers. The Empire's soldiers, once confident and arrogant, found themselves looking toward the sky with unease. The Emperor's command rooms were filled with sleepless nights and constant reports, fleets disappearing, colonies going dark, strange energy readings near the border. Still, the humans made no move. They waited, patient and still, like hunters who already knew how the story would end. The Emperor sat before the great map of the stars, hands clasped tightly. Every world of the Empire glowed before him like dust caught in a sunbeam. They watch us, he said to his generals, and we do not know why. General Mal straightened, his voice firm. Then let us strike first, Your Majesty. We cannot let fear guide us, but another voice, quieter, broke through. It was Commander Lyra Vaughn, summoned to report her findings. With respect, my Emperor, she said, we don't even know what they are anymore. Their technology defies everything we understand. Every time we approach, our systems collapse. The Emperor looked at her, his eyes narrowing. Do you suggest we surrender, Commander? She shook her head. No, I suggest we listen. That single sentence unsettled the entire council. Listen, to the humans, it was madness. But the Emperor didn't dismiss her. He knew arrogance had destroyed many empires before his. Then tell me, he said, what do you hear? Lyra hesitated. Their silence is not emptiness. It's control. Every time we act, they respond without movement. They are showing us that we no longer decide the pace. Her words hung in the air like static. The Emperor leaned back slowly. So they command through patience. He stood and looked toward the great windows that showed the galaxy spread before them. Then we will break that silence. Within days, the Empire began preparing a grand display of power. Warships assembled in orbits around the capital. Planetary shields brightened and millions of soldiers stood ready. The media broadcast images of strength, of unity, of an empire unshaken. But beneath the surface, fear rippled through every rank. Everyone remembered what had happened to the scout fleets. Every soldier knew that the Void Fleet, the humans, had done nothing yet destroyed everything they sent. Still, the Empire's pride demanded a message. They aimed one of their most powerful weapons, the solar spear, at the sector where the human fleet lingered. The weapon drew power from a star itself, focusing it into a beam capable of splitting moons. The firing sequence began. Across the capital, people gathered to watch on their holoscreens. The Emperor gave the order. Let the void know who rules this galaxy. The beam fired, a white spear of light that stretched across space, tearing through the void like a sun unleashed. Silence followed. Then the transmission feeds crackled. The target area glowed bright for a moment. But when the light faded, the human ship still stood exactly where they had been. Unmoved. Unharmed. Every system in the Empire flickered at once. Lights dimmed. Engines failed. For exactly 13 seconds, the galaxy went dark. When the lights returned, a single message appeared on every channel, every planet, every ship. No sound, just glowing text. We warned the stars once. They did not listen. The panic that followed was unlike anything the Empire had known. Civilian worlds demanded answers. Fear turned to anger. Riots broke out on outer colonies. In the military, doubt spread like fire. Lyra watched from the observation deck as the stars pulsed faintly with strange energy. "They're communicating," she whispered. "Not with words, with the very fabric of space." The Emperor, shaken but proud, refused to show fear. "Then we will show them what fear is." He ordered the celestial armada, his greatest fleet, to prepare for battle. Meanwhile, the human ships began to move. Slowly, gracefully, as if drifting with the current of invisible waves. They didn't form an attack line. Instead, they arranged themselves into a vast circle, enclosing the Empire's border systems like a glowing halo. Every Imperial ship that approached was ignored, as if humanity didn't see them as a threat. To them, the Empire's power was irrelevant. That indifference was more terrifying than war itself. In the midst of the chaos, Lyra returned to her private quarters. She replayed the recordings of the human transmissions again and again, listening to the faint patterns beneath the static. They weren't random. They were coordinates. When she mapped them, she realized what they pointed to: ancient human colonies wiped out by the Empire during the Great Rebellion. Each coordinate marked a scar in history, each one now lit by the humans' presence. "They're not here to conquer," she whispered. "They're here to remind us." Her discovery spread quietly through the ranks, and rumors began to twist the truth. Some said the humans were gods returned. Others believed they were vengeance given form. The Emperor, trapped between pride and dread, gave one final command: "If they wish for remembrance, we will make them remember the power of the Empire." The fleets readied their weapons. Engines thundered. At that very moment, the human fleet responded, not with fire but with light. A pulse of white radiance spread through space, gentle but vast. It washed over every ship, every planet, every life. For a single heartbeat, everyone saw something. Images, memories, flashes of Earth, of blue oceans and skies long lost. Then it was gone. The Emperor fell to his knees, unable to speak. Lyra stood frozen, her heart pounding. Humanity hadn't attacked. They had shared a memory, a warning. The Empire now understood. The void was not their enemy. It was a mirror, and in it they saw the truth of what they had done. The silence that followed was the sound of an empire beginning to crack. The Empire's pride began to fracture. Across its 1,000 worlds, citizens whispered the same name in fear and awe: humanity. No one dared speak it loudly, but every heart felt it. The pulse of light that had swept across the stars was no illusion. Millions had seen it. Memories of blue oceans, green forests, human laughter, and skies that felt alive. These were not weapons. They were reminders. Yet the effect was devastating. Entire colonies reported chaos. Some worshipped the humans as divine. Others cursed them as ancient demons. The Empire's propaganda tried to calm the storm, claiming it was a hallucination caused by the solar spear's energy feedback. But everyone knew the truth. The humans had spoken through memory itself. The Emperor locked himself away in the inner sanctum of the capital palace, surrounded by his advisors and generals. His once unshakable voice had grown quiet. "They defy reason," he said softly. "They do not fight, they do not speak, yet the galaxy trembles." General Maul stood firm. "Then we must strike first before fear destroys us." "Strike what?" came a voice from the shadows. It was Lyra Vaughn. She stepped forward, her face lit by the faint glow of the star map. "You can't strike silence, General. You can't destroy something that doesn't resist." The room fell silent. For the first time, even the Emperor didn't answer. Outside, the human fleet continued its slow, deliberate movement. They never crossed the Empire's borders, never fired, never communicated. And yet, the Empire's fleets collapsed under their own tension. Patrol captains disobeyed orders, abandoning their posts. Some crews destroyed their own ships to avoid entering the death zone. Every encounter ended the same. No damage, no battle, only disappearance. The humans didn't kill. They erased. Meanwhile, Lyra's investigation deepened. She had secretly gathered fragments of ancient archives salvaged from destroyed worlds. Late at night, she decoded them one by one. The files told the story of humanity's fall, how they had refused to surrender to the Empire's rule, how their worlds had been bombarded, and how the survivors had fled into the void. There, beyond the reach of light, they adapted. They learned to merge with their machines, to harness energy directly from the vacuum itself. It took them millennia, but they had become something more. A civilization that no longer needed planets, that no longer feared the dark. They had built their strength in silence. Lyra understood now why they had returned. They don't want war, she murmured. They want the galaxy to remember who they are. But the Empire was too proud to see it. The Emperor's Council demanded an answer, something to restore faith in their power. If we do nothing, said one advisor, we lose control of the people. They must see us act. Against his doubts, the Emperor agreed. He ordered Operation Dawnfire, a massive assault designed to destroy one of the human vessels and prove that the Empire still commanded the stars. Dozens of fleets assembled, the largest armada in Imperial history. Their engines lit up the night like burning suns. Every world watched the live broadcast, the Emperor's message echoing across the void. Today we remind the galaxy that the Empire does not kneel. The fleet jumped to the border, their destination fixed, the largest human ship, a vessel 10 kilometers long, hovering near a red dwarf. When they arrived, the humans did not move. The Imperial ships surrounded them, thousands strong. The order was given. A storm of light filled space. Missiles, plasma beams, and rail cannons fired in perfect synchronization, forming a brilliant spiral of destruction. The energy output was enough to vaporize a moon. When the light cleared, the human ship was still there. Not a single mark, not a single flare. Then something impossible happened. The Imperial ships began shutting down, one after another. Their engines went dark. Their weapons turned cold. Every screen across the fleet flickered. A voice echoed through every system, calm and cold. Power is not strength. Silence is not weakness. You have forgotten both. Lyra, watching from the command deck, felt her heart freeze. It wasn't a threat. It was truth. The humans weren't fighting, they were teaching. One by one, the Empire's fleets drifted helplessly, trapped in place. The human ship emitted a pulse of light, soft and slow, that spread across the battlefield. The disabled ships began to move, not under their own control, but gently pushed away as if by invisible hands. None were destroyed. None were harmed. The humans had shown restraint that the Empire had never known. When the fleets returned home, shame followed them. Soldiers who once spoke proudly now whispered of the silent fleet that had defeated them without violence. The people began to question their rulers. Protests spread. Statues of the Emperor were defaced in the streets. They didn't destroy us, one citizen cried. They spared us. That idea, the thought that humanity had shown mercy, was more dangerous than any weapon. It shattered the illusion of the Empire's moral superiority. Inside the palace, the Emperor's rage burned. They humiliate us with compassion, he shouted. They mock our power. General Mail fell to one knee. Then give the command, my Emperor. Let us unleash everything. But Lyra stepped forward again. And if we do? She asked. If we fire all we have and they survive again, what will remain of your empire then? The Emperor's hands trembled, but he refused to answer. He turned to the stars beyond the glass dome. No empire falls by the sword, he whispered. It falls when its people stop believing. That night, as the capital world slept beneath a false peace, the stars above flickered once more. New ships appeared at the edge of the void. Hundreds, then thousands, forming vast patterns like constellations reborn. Humanity was no longer a rumor. They were a presence, vast and undeniable. The Empire's people looked up and understood at last that the age of their dominance was ending, not by war but by remembrance. The void had returned what they once cast away, and it carried with it the quiet strength of a species that refused to die. The Empire's capital world no longer glittered like before. Smoke rose from distant riots, and the once proud banners of gold hung tattered over silent plazas. Every broadcast now began with the same nervous greeting. Order is maintained. But everyone knew it wasn't true. The pulse of human light had reached every corner of the galaxy, burning not cities but belief. For the first time in history, the Empire's citizens began to doubt the legend of their invincibility. Soldiers who once shouted the Emperor's name now whispered another, humanity. In the Emperor's throne room, the silence was heavy. Holographic maps showed entire sectors in rebellion. Fleets had deserted, governors had vanished, and trade routes had gone dark. The Emperor stood before the great star window, staring at the growing halo of light at the galaxy's edge. The human fleet. They mean to unmake us without war, he muttered. They mean to erase what we believe we are. Lyra Vaughn stood at the far end of the room. She looked weary but calm. Perhaps they only want you to see what you became, she said quietly. Perhaps this is not war, it's reflection. General Maul, still armored in polished silver, slammed his fist against the table. Reflection? They humiliated us. They crippled our fleets without lifting a finger. If we do nothing, there will be no empire left to reflect upon. The Emperor turned to them both. His voice was low but sharp. We will not surrender our destiny to ghosts. He ordered the formation of a new task force, the Celestial Dawn, composed of the most advanced ships in the Empire, armed with weapons fueled by stars themselves. If humanity wishes to play gods, he said coldly, then let us remind them who made the heavens burn. Across the galaxy, thousands of ships prepared for war. The Emperor himself would command from the front. News of his decision spread instantly. The people, desperate for hope, clung to it. The Empire called it the Final Crusade, but among the ranks, soldiers whispered that it would be their last stand. In the quiet of her quarters, Lyra stared at the ancient data fragments she had found. Each one told the same story. Humanity had faced extinction once before and survived by becoming something greater. They had built fleets that moved through the void not by engines but by will. They didn't just harness energy, they were energy. We can't fight them, she whispered to herself. We can only understand them. But when she tried to warn her superiors, they ignored her. Orders had already been given. The Celestial Dawn would engage. Humanity would be confronted directly for the first time in millennia. The fleets gathered near the event horizon of a dying star, a fitting place for the end of arrogance. The Emperor's voice boomed across every ship. For the Empire. For the stars we built, let them see our light before it fades. The fleet surged forward, tens of thousands of ships moving as one, and then the humans appeared. They didn't arrive by jump or warp. They simply were there. One moment the void was empty. The next it was filled with shadows shaped like ships, vast and motionless. The human vessels gleamed faintly under the dying star's light. Their presence was quiet, unthreatening, and yet it felt eternal. The Emperor gave the order to fire. Every weapon, every beam, every missile screamed through the void. The explosion was so bright that nearby moons turned to ash. The Empire's sensors flooded with white light, and then darkness. When the screens cleared, the humans still stood untouched. But this time they responded. A low hum filled space itself, vibrating through metal, through bone, through thought. The human ships began to glow. Their hulls unfolded like wings, revealing patterns of light that resembled constellations. One ship drifted forward and projected a single message across every Imperial channel. You burned our worlds to prove your strength. We built our strength in your shadow. The Emperor stared, speechless. The humans didn't attack. Instead, they released waves of light that rippled through every Imperial ship. One by one, their weapons shut down, not destroyed but disarmed. Pilots could still breathe, engines still ran, but every weapon system went silent. It was as if the ships themselves had forgotten how to wage war. The Emperor slammed his hands on the console. They are mocking us. But his words trembled. Behind him, Lyra whispered, No, they're freeing us. And then for a brief moment, the human fleet transmitted something else. Not words this time, images. The Emperor saw flashes of humanity's past. Burning cities on Earth, collapsing towers, terrified faces under alien fire. He saw the Empire's own ships centuries ago, raining fire upon them. He saw survivors crawling into the dark void, carrying nothing but determination. Then he saw what they became. Travelers of the infinite, masters of silence, architects of peace through remembrance. The transmission ended. The human fleet began to withdraw, leaving behind no wreckage, no death, only silence. The Emperor fell to his knees, his pride collapsing beneath the weight of truth. Lyra stood behind him, tears forming in her eyes. They could have destroyed us, she said, but they didn't. As the human fleet disappeared into the darkness beyond the dying star, one final message echoed through the void, soft and haunting. We remember what you forgot, what it means to be human. Across the galaxy, the Empire's systems began to restore themselves. Power returned to cities, lights flickered back on, and ships regained control. Yet nothing felt the same. The people looked to the stars, and for the first time, they did not feel pride. They felt humility. The Empire had survived, but it was no longer invincible. The humans had shown them a reflection of their own soul, and in that reflection, they saw not gods, but beings who had once forgotten what compassion looked like. In the quiet that followed, Lyra stood alone on the observation deck, watching the faint glimmer of the retreating fleet. "They didn't come to conquer," she whispered. "They came to remind us why we exist." Far beyond the edge of the galaxy, the human ships vanished back into the void. But every Imperial world now looked up at the night sky differently. The stars no longer belonged to the Empire. They belonged to all who remembered. The Empire's palace lay in silence. Once filled with the sound of marching guards and diplomatic visitors, now it echoed with emptiness. The grand hallways, polished and endless, reflected the fading glow of the capital's energy fields. The human fleet had vanished days ago, yet their presence lingered like a shadow that refused to leave. No one had dared to speak of them openly, but every mind carried the same thought. Humanity had spared them. That truth haunted the Emperor more than any defeat could. He stood before the great window of his throne room, watching the slow rotation of the capital world below. Its lights flickered like dying embers. "They left us alive," he said at last, his voice cracking. "That was their punishment." General Mal stood beside him, his armor dulled from exhaustion. "We still have power," he insisted. "We can rebuild our fleets, strengthen our rule." The Emperor turned sharply. "Power, you saw what they did. Our fleets are dust compared to theirs. Our weapons are toys in their eyes." Mal clenched his jaw but said nothing. Lyra Vaughn entered quietly, her uniform torn and her eyes tired. She had spent the last few days among the people, listening, observing. "They no longer fear you," she said simply. The Emperor stared at her. "Then what do they feel?" "Hope," she replied. "Not for us. For themselves." The Emperor looked away. For years, the Empire had thrived by convincing its citizens that obedience was safety, but humanity's return had shown them something different. Freedom through remembrance. The humans didn't demand surrender, didn't demand worship. They just reminded everyone of what the Empire had taken away. That was the real victory. Outside the palace, across the capital, the once loyal military was fracturing. Some fleets had already declared independence, refusing further orders. Others swore allegiance to no one. Civilian protests grew louder each day. The great imperial statues were torn down, replaced with candles and strange symbols of Earth. Simple shapes of oceans, continents, and stars. Lyra returned to the imperial archives, hoping to find some trace of what humanity had become. She found more than she expected. In a forgotten vault deep beneath the palace, sealed for centuries, she discovered fragments of transmissions from the First War. The recordings showed the early days of humanity's exile, families loading ships, children crying, worlds burning behind them. But there was something else. A final message broadcast into the void before their disappearance. The voice was human, calm and unbroken. "We are not gone. We are becoming." Lyra played it again and again, understanding now that humanity hadn't survived despite the Empire. They had survived because of what the Empire forced them to become. When she returned to the surface, she found crowds gathering outside the palace gates. They weren't angry anymore. They were waiting. For what? She asked an old merchant standing near her. He smiled softly. For the next message. They said they would return. That night, the stars began to flicker once more. The same pale light that had once swept the galaxy now returned, faint but familiar. The Emperor rushed to the command center, his heart racing. "Are they back?" he demanded. The technicians worked frantically, trying to trace the signal. "It's not ships," one said. "It's something else. It's everywhere." Every planet, every colony, every outpost across the Empire began receiving the same broadcast. Not words this time, but images. Fields of green, oceans of blue, and skies filled with birds. People stood in silence, staring at the beauty that seemed to come from nowhere. The message ended with a single line of text. "We build where you destroy. We rise where you fall." The Emperor sank into his chair, trembling. "They taunt us even in peace." But Lyra shook her head. "No, they're showing us how to begin again." In the following days, something extraordinary happened. The riots stopped. Trade routes reopened. Entire worlds once divided began to rebuild. Not for the Empire, but for themselves. Scientists studied the remnants of the human signal, discovering that it carried no weapon, no control code. It was pure energy. Information, memory, and emotion encoded as light. It couldn't be copied, couldn't be weaponized. It could only be experienced. The Emperor called Lyra to his chamber once more. His crown lay beside him, forgotten, You've seen what they've done, he said quietly. What do I do now? Lyra looked out at the stars. You do nothing, she said. You let the people remember. He laughed bitterly. That is not rule. No, she agreed. It's humanity. In time, the empire began to change. The word empire itself lost meaning. The old systems of control fell apart, replaced by councils of free worlds. The emperor faded into legend, his power gone but his story remembered. Lyra left the capital and joined a group of explorers who sought to find where the humans had gone. Her ship, small and fragile, launched quietly into the same void where the fleet had once appeared. As she traveled deeper into the unknown, she carried with her fragments of the old archive, the recordings, the voices, the stories of both conquerors and the conquered. One night, as she drifted past the last known border of mapped space, a faint light appeared ahead. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. She smiled. They're still out here, she whispered. Watching. A transmission came through her console, faint but clear. A familiar voice, human, warm, and proud, spoke softly. We never left, Commander Vaughn. We were waiting for you to remember. Tears filled her eyes as she looked into the endless dark. Humanity had not vanished into the void. They had become part of it. Not conquerors, not gods, but guardians of what the galaxy had forgotten. As her ship disappeared into that distant light, the message of the humans echoed across the stars once more. We remember, and now so do you. Lyra's ship drifted through the endless black, surrounded by silent starlight. The further she went from the old empire's borders, the quieter the universe became. Her sensors flickered with strange readings, energy patterns that pulsed like breathing. She knew she was close. Humanity's signature wasn't in technology or radiation. It was rhythm, harmony. The void itself seemed alive, resonating with something ancient and patient. For days she followed the signals deeper and deeper into the uncharted dark. Her crew, a handful of explorers and historians, watched in awe. None of them spoke much anymore. Words felt too small for what they were witnessing. One night, as they passed through the wreckage of an ancient battlefield, Lyra stood at the observation window. The remnants of shattered warships floated like ghosts, old Imperial models torn apart but strangely preserved. The metal gleamed faintly, coated with a strange crystalline growth. It's like they're frozen in time, whispered one of her crew. Lyra nodded. Or forgiven, she said quietly. The sensors detected no life, no threat. But as they passed, the ship's lights dimmed for a moment and a faint echo filled the air. It was human singing, soft, layered voices, carried on frequencies too complex to be natural. The sound wrapped around them like a memory. The next morning, their systems picked up something impossible, a beacon written in both human and Imperial script. Coordinates. It wasn't a distress call. It was an invitation. They know we're here, said her pilot nervously. Lyra smiled faintly. They've always known. They followed the beacon into a region where light itself seemed to fade. Stars grew dim, and gravity warped subtly like a gentle current pulling them inward. And then out of the darkness it appeared, a world, or perhaps something more. It wasn't like any planet Lyra had ever seen. It glowed softly from within, covered in vast geometric patterns that shimmered like living circuits. Towers of silver rose from oceans of light, and across its surface immense structures pulsed like heartbeats. Is this human? A crew member whispered. Lyra gazed at the world, speechless. No, she said finally. It's what they became. They approached carefully, guided by invisible forces. There were no defenses, no warnings, yet the ship felt watched, measured, and understood. When they entered orbit, the communications console lit up. A voice spoke, calm and clear, as if it came from the air itself. Welcome, travelers of memory. You have come far. The crew froze. It wasn't a recording. It was live. Identify yourself, Lyra said softly. The voice replied, We know who you are, Lyra Vaughn of the Fallen Empire. You seek what you do not understand. A beam of light extended from the planet's surface, surrounding their ship. The hull shimmered and the view outside changed. They were no longer above the planet. They were within it. The ship floated over a vast city of light and water, endless and radiant. Humans walked there, at least they looked human. Some were pure energy wrapped in shape, their bodies transparent, their faces glowing faintly with starlight. They moved gracefully like echoes of a forgotten dream. One of them appeared before Lyra in the ship's command room. A man, or perhaps something beyond a man. His eyes carried galaxies within them. "You have come to see what your empire could not imagine," he said. Lyra stepped forward. "You're real," she whispered. "You're human." He smiled. "We were. Now we are what humanity became when it stopped running from its own shadow." Lyra tried to find words, but none came. "Why did you come back?" she finally asked. "Why the fleet, the silence, the messages?" The being's expression softened. "Because forgetting is a kind of death. The Empire built its throne upon the graves of those who refused to kneel. We came not to destroy but to remind, to awaken memory in those who had traded truth for comfort." He gestured toward the planet below. "When the Empire burned our worlds, they thought they had ended us. But they freed us instead. We left behind the flesh that feared. We became one with the void that frightened them. We learned that power is not control. Power is understanding." Lyra lowered her head. "You changed everything," she said. "The Empire has fallen because of you." The man shook his head. "No. The Empire fell because it forgot what it meant to be alive." For a long moment the two stood in silence. The crew watched in awe, too afraid to speak. Then the man extended his hand toward her. "Come," he said. "You have seen the fall. Now see the beginning." In a flash of light, the command room vanished. Lyra stood on the surface of the luminous world. The air was warm and alive. In the distance, cities shimmered like constellations reborn. Humans, true humans, evolved and radiant, walked freely. No weapons, no walls, just balance. She looked at them and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. "They're rebuilding," she whispered. The man nodded beside her. "Yes, but not an empire, a memory. A reminder of what unity means when it isn't bound by control." She turned to him, eyes filled with wonder. "Will you return?" He smiled faintly. "We never left. We exist wherever humanity chooses to remember what it truly is. You will carry this truth back to your people, Lyra Vaughn." Before she could answer, the world around her began to dissolve into light. The man's voice echoed softly as she faded. "Tell them the void is not empty, it is waiting." When she awoke, she was back aboard her ship. The planet was gone. Her crew stared at her wide-eyed. "What happened?" one asked. Lyra looked out the window where only a faint shimmer remained in space. "We saw the future," she said quietly, "and it was human." As her ship turned back toward the remnants of the old galaxy, a final message appeared on her console. Simple, glowing, eternal. "We remember. So must you." Far away across the broken empire, the stars began to shine brighter than before, as if humanity's light, once lost, had finally returned home.